This charts the course of overall coal production. So this is both thermal and metallurgical coal in Australia, China, and India since 1980. Now, as you can see there, China has undergone absolutely meteoric rise. And honestly, India's rise would look pretty meteoric too if there wasn't China on the chart. And it's also just worth noting that earlier this year, the Indian government's Ministry of Coal announced that India would be increasing its production on 2024 levels by over 500 million tons, which is approximately an Australia and then some.
Yeah, well, that puts net zero into a different light, doesn't it?
It does, and I think that that's sort of part of the problem. And I mean, I've always been of the view that the developing world was going to pursue the most cost-effective and accessible route to industrialization because that's the logical thing for them to do. And for a country like India that does have a lot of thermal coal, that does see the issues with building a energy network on foundations that require imports of gas, etc., or oil, if they can build it on something that they can access domestically and access domestically on a large scale, then that's obviously going to be what they prefer because that has generally been what India has tried to do. They've very much tried to be self-sufficient and India for India. And you can't really begrudge them that, but I think it does complicate the sort of overall emissions reductions when you are seeing India and China continue to build coal-fired power capacity, even as other nations such as Australia, Europe, the US, Japan pull back on coal-fired capacity.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, in the UK, of course, they have stopped using coal and blew up all the power stations to make sure they couldn't use them again.
Is that's what so basically they thought about it. They thought, what would Stalin do? And if it was being invaded, and they went full scorched earth.
Exactly. Exactly right.
That
Uh, It's amazing.
I yeah I It's a very complex issue. I understand, but I mean I think it's challenging when you look at a chart like this and you think, sheesh,
Hmm.
that say for example, India is going to add another 500 million tons worth of coal capacity in the next 5 years alone. And then you think forward to the future. You think, well, what's it going to look like later on in the century when you start to see Africa hitting where China and India were a decade ago, or they are now? Particularly some of the more populous, more perhaps more affluent by sub-Saharan African standards, so places like Nigeria, which still which have significant oil reserves. You know, uh, you could see them pursuing, say, for example, using the gas that they get from their oil wells to power their future. So it's a very, very complex picture, and it's all well and good for to go talk to governments in sub-Saharan Africa today and say, oh, hey, well, this country signed up to net zero, or they signed up to this particular climate agreement, but that doesn't really matter all that much when they don't really have the means to break the agreement, even if they wanted to. But if you're talking about in 20 years, people looking to pursue the best course of action for their nation, that could be different. I mean, naturally, 20 years is a long time. There could be different advances in technologies, different advances in renewables, but they may look at things and think, well, what can we do domestically? What do we have domestically? And that could be coal, that could be gas. So it's just going to depend on how things play out. Because at the end of the day, people can make all sorts of agreements, but it's pragmatism that wins the day.
Yeah, and just Trump, of course, and net zero. Well, two different polars, aren't they?
Well, there's definitely there's that, isn't there? Just pursuing a very different course of action, but
Hmm.
it's just one of those things. I mean, although to be honest, I'm really just going to be curious to see how net zero fares in Europe
Yes.
as the challenges continue to emerge from the cost of industrial power. And when I say industrial power, I don't mean actual industrial power in terms of like building stuff. I mean in terms of powering industry with the cost of electricity.